The soft morning light filtered through the window of Jenna's small apartment, casting patterns of shadows and light over the canvases and paints scattered around the space. The smell of solvent mingled with the aroma of fresh coffee, creating an atmosphere that should have inspired her, but instead left her feeling even more anguished. The walls were covered with unfinished works, each one bearing witness to her constant struggle to find a purpose in her art. Jenna sat at the table, her nervous fingers caressing the brush as her mind wandered. She stared at a blank canvas in front of her, full of possibilities, but at the same time, it seemed like an endless abyss. "Why is it so hard?" she murmured to herself, the frustration evident in her voice. "Maybe I'm really not good enough." The heavy words resonated in her heart, making her hesitate. The echo of her insecurities consumed her, and she felt trapped in a cycle of doubt. Meanwhile, a few blocks away, Ethan watched Jenna's house. He hid in the shadows of a narrow street, his gaze fixed on the window where the young artist spent hours. Life on the streets was not easy, and the need drove him to consider actions he would never have contemplated before. He felt the weight of guilt and need as his stomach growled, reminding him that survival often required difficult choices. Just a small hit, he told himself, convincing himself that there was no other option. Just a little money, and I'll disappear. Ethan's gaze lingered on the blank canvas that Jenna had left in plain sight. There was something there that intrigued him, a spark of creativity that seemed to oppose the darkness of his own life. But the urgency of the situation brought him back to reality. "I need to do this," he whispered, as he prepared to act. With one last look at the window, he stepped out of the shadow and headed for the artist's back door. As the doorknob turned, Jenna's heart raced. She wasn't expecting visitors, let alone an invasion. The sound of the door opening sent a shiver down her spine. "Who's there?" she called out, trying to keep her voice steady, but the anxiety betrayed her. Silence was the only response, and then she heard heavy footsteps approaching. The instinct for defense kicked in, and Jenna grabbed a brush as if it were a sword. When Ethan entered, their eyes met. He hesitated, surprised to find the woman he had been watching in her creative routine. What should have been an act of robbery turned into a moment of confusion. Instead of screaming or running, Jenna studied the man in front of her. There was something in his eyes, a mix of desperation and vulnerability that made her pause. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I just need money," Ethan replied, the sincerity in his voice catching Jenna by surprise. He was far from the cold thief she had imagined. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." The tension hung in the air, and Jenna, in an act of courage, decided not to let fear take over. "If you need money, maybe we can talk. What brought you to this?" The question slipped from her lips before she could think better of it. Ethan's expression changed, a mixture of confusion and curiosity reflected on his face. I have no other choice," he said, looking at the floor. "Life on the street is not easy. I just wanted a way to survive." Jenna felt a wave of empathy. While her own life was crumbling artistically, there stood a man fighting for survival in a completely different way. "What if, instead of stealing, you helped me create something? Something that could be worth money?" she suggested, the idea forming in her mind like a light bulb turning on in the dark. "You seem to have a story. Maybe we can turn it into art." Ethan stared at her, disbelief dancing in his eyes. "Are you serious?" "Yes," Jenna replied, feeling an inexplicable connection with this stranger. "I need help, and you need a way out. We can do this together." The silence that followed was heavy, but Jenna's gaze conveyed a hope that Ethan did not expect to find. He was about to make a decision that would change their lives forever. Jenna watched Ethan for a moment, her intense gaze reflecting a mix of curiosity and distrust. The tension between them was palpable, as if the air around them was charged with electricity. "Do you really think you can help me?" she asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Ethan hesitated, the muscles in his face relaxing slightly as he pondered the unusual proposal. "Why would you do this? I'm a thief, Jenna. You shouldn't trust me," he replied, his voice laden with raw sincerity. He felt like a shadow, an intruder who had invaded not just her home, but also her dreams. "Because I see something in you," Jenna replied, with a determination that surprised even herself. You can bring a new perspective to my art. Instead of stealing, we can create something together. An installation that shocks and provokes, that makes people stop and think. Something no one has ever seen before. Ethan frowned, confused. You want me to help make art? Like I know anything about that? He looked around, observing the paints, canvases, and brushes scattered around the apartment. I only know how to take what isn't mine. Exactly. You understand what it's like to live on the margins, what it's like to be invisible. That can be an important part of the art, she insisted, her voice gaining strength. Let's use your experience. Together, we can create something that really resonates with people. He felt intrigued. The idea of transforming his life, of leaving behind the shadow of crime, seemed both frightening and exciting. What if it doesn't work, he asked, a slight tremor in his voice. What if it does? Jenna countered, a shy smile emerging on her lips. At least, we'll be doing something that matters. Art can be a powerful form of expression, and you already have a story. Let's tell that story. Jenna's proposal began to seduce Ethan. He had never thought of life that way. The idea of collaborating with someone, of creating something beautiful, seemed like a distant dream. Okay, I'm in, but what do you want to do? He was nervous, but a small spark of hope began to ignite within him. I have some ideas, Jenna replied, taking the lead. The first thing we need is a space, a place where we can work without interruptions. And we also need materials. Let's mix your ideas with mine. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. Jenna and Ethan worked side by side, trying to balance their differences and unite their artistic visions. He was surprised to discover that he had a natural intuition for composition, and Jenna was amazed at how their ideas intertwined in unexpected ways. In one moment, they were discussing the color palette, and in the next, laughing at an inside joke that only they understood. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm having fun, Ethan commented one day, looking at the blank canvas in front of them. Jenna smiled, her heart pulsing with the satisfaction of seeing Ethan open up to new possibilities. Me too, Jenna revealed, checking the paint palette. It's like we're creating a new reality, one that has nothing to do with the life you used to lead. The conversations became deeper, and they began to share parts of their stories. Jenna talked about her past, her struggles as an artist, and the dreams she always had. I just wanted to be seen, you know? Art is like an extension of me, but often, I feel like no one really cares, she confessed. Ethan, in turn, revealed fragments of his life on the streets. It's hard to be seen when you're always on the run. I just wanted to survive. But at the same time, I always wanted something more. I never thought I could be part of something positive, he said, his eyes shining with a new determination. As the days turned into weeks, the chemistry between them grew. They were not just work partners. There was an emotional connection forming, a deep friendship that defied the barriers that initially existed between them. Jenna began to dream again, not just about her art, but about a future that could include Ethan. With each shared laugh and exchanged idea, they were building something unexpected and meaningful, a bond that could change their lives forever. The abandoned warehouse was a vast space full of possibilities. The peeling walls and dust-covered floor seemed to tell stories of a forgotten past, but at that moment, the place became a stage for Jenna and Ethan's creativity. As they organized the paints, canvases, and materials they had collected, Jenna looked at Ethan, who was focused on assembling a structure that would shape the installation. You have an incredible way with this, Jenna said, admiring the way he manipulated the materials with unexpected confidence. I never imagined you had this hidden talent. Ethan looked up, a shy smile appearing on his face. I think it's because I never had the chance to show it. I was always busy trying to survive. He adjusted a piece of metal, creating a solid base for what seemed to be an abstract sculpture. But now that we're doing this together, I feel like I can really express myself. Jenna approached, observing his every movement with attention. Art is a form of freedom. You can put your emotions, your experiences, everything into a single piece. She gestured toward the space around them. And here, we have the whole world to explore. The two spent hours assembling the installation, diving into a creative flow that felt almost magical. The sun filtered through the broken windows, illuminating the environment with a soft light that brought the vibrant colors of the paints to life. With each new layer of paint they applied, the installation began to take shape, reflecting the stories that each of them carried. "This part here," Jenna said, pointing to an empty space on the structure, "could represent the struggle between who we are and who we want to be." Ethan nodded, thoughtful. "And what if we make a darker part to show the dark side of our choices?" He began mixing dark colors, a gesture that reflected his own internal struggle. "As if each of our pasts is present but not dominating the work." Jenna smiled, impressed by the depth of his ideas. "Exactly. That can connect with people. Everyone has something they'd like to forget, but that is part of who we are." As the day turned into night, the installation began to attract the attention of some curious passersby on the street. Jenna and Ethan exchanged looks of complicity, feeling the adrenaline of creation and the growing connection between them. However, the joy and excitement were accompanied by a shadow that approached. That same night, as they were tidying up their tools, a familiar face of Ethan's entered the warehouse unceremoniously. The man had a familiar air, but his presence was like a weight in the light environment they had created. "Hey, Ethan, thought you had abandoned this life." His tone was provocative, and Jenna noticed that the tension hung in the air. Ethan froze, his smile disappearing. "What are you doing here, Jake?" "Came to see how you were doing. Heard you're having fun with art now. But hey, you know you can always come back, right? There's a big score planned, and I need you." Jenna watched Ethan's expression change. He seemed torn between the past calling him and the future he was beginning to glimpse alongside her. "I don't want that anymore, Jake. I'm focused on art now," he said, his voice firm but with a tremor of insecurity. Jake laughed, a dry, disdainful sound. "Art? That's a dream, man. What are you going to do with that? There's no future in it. Come with me, we'll make real money." Jenna felt a chill in her stomach. "Ethan, you don't need that. We have something special here. You can choose a different path." She approached him, placing her hand on his arm, trying to convey confidence and support. Ethan looked at Jenna and then at Jake. The pressure between the two worlds he inhabited was becoming unbearable. I need to think," he muttered, confused. Looking at Jenna, he saw the light and hope she represented, but the shadow of the past continued to whisper in his mind, calling him back to a life he was trying to leave behind. The tension was rising in the air, and Jenna realized that Ethan's internal battle was just beginning. What would it take for him to really leave the past behind and embrace the future they were building together? The sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of the warehouse where Jenna and Ethan were working, creating a play of shadows and light that danced on the walls. The installation was almost complete, and the creative energy surrounding them was palpable. Jenna, with her hands stained with paint, watched Ethan as he adjusted one of the elements of the work. He was focused, the muscles in his face contracting in a determined expression. "Ethan, this is perfect," Jenna exclaimed, a smile lighting up her face. "You really have an incredible talent for this." He turned to her, his eyes shining with a mix of pride and insecurity. "Really? I'm just trying not to ruin what you've done." He let out a nervous laugh, but the tension in his body seemed to dissipate with the compliment. "No, you don't understand. This piece needs you. You bring a perspective I would never have alone." Jenna approached, placing her hand on his arm. "We're doing this together." Her touch sent a wave of warmth through Ethan's body. He felt torn. On one hand, the art fascinated him. On the other, his past pulled him back like a magnet. He began, hesitating. "Sometimes I wonder if I really deserve this. You in this art life. I'm just a thief, Jenna." She frowned, concern filling her gaze. "You're not just that. You're much more. Look at what we're creating. Think about how many people this can touch." Ethan looked away, struggling against the internal demons that always haunted him. "There's a friend of mine still hanging around. He doesn't want me to leave this life." Jenna felt her heart tighten. The negative influence surrounding Ethan was a constant shadow, a reminder that at any moment he could be pulled back into crime. "You need to stay away from him, Ethan. You can't let him interfere with what we're building." The firmness in her voice was unmistakable. He nodded slowly, but a cloud of doubt still hovered over him. "I promise I'll try," Ethan finally said, though he knew promises were easy to make but hard to keep. The night of the installation's reveal arrived faster than they expected. The warehouse was transformed into an improvised gallery with hanging lights and a crowd of curious onlookers. Jenna was nervous, but excitement pulsed within her. Ethan, on the other hand, was amazed. He watched people's reactions and felt a growing pride in being part of something so beautiful. "Look, they're loving it," he exclaimed, pointing to a group admiring the work. Jenna smiled, her heart beating faster. "This is just the beginning, Ethan. If this is a success, we can do even more. We can inspire so many people." But deep down, a small voice whispered that things might not be that simple. As the night progressed, a famous collector appeared, interested in their work. Jenna felt a chill in her stomach as she realized her life could change forever. "Are you the artist who created this?" the collector asked, his intense gaze fixed on Jenna. She nodded, the nervousness almost paralyzing her. "Yes, that's me. I'm impressed. This is truly innovative." The admiration in his voice made Jenna feel seen for the first time in a long time. While she was talking to the collector, Ethan stepped back a bit, watching the scene with a mix of happiness and anxiety. He knew this was the chance Jenna had always dreamed of, but at the same time, a part of him felt that his presence could ruin everything. He walked away, seeking a quieter corner of the warehouse. Looking at the installation, his mind was in turmoil. What should he do? The life of crime still called to him, but at the same time, he felt he was finally finding a purpose alongside Jenna. She had believed in him. But what if he failed? What if the truth about his past became a burden that Jenna could not bear? As the night progressed, the whispers of success and the possibility of a bright future surrounded Jenna. However, for Ethan, the weight of the past and the difficult choices he still had to make loomed over him like a dark cloud. The daylight filtered through the windows of the warehouse, illuminating the stained walls and dust-covered floor. Jenna was absorbed in her work, quick and confident brushstrokes, but her mind was restless. The brilliance of her creation now seemed overshadowed by a growing shadow in her heart. Ethan, who once seemed like an ally, was now becoming an enigma shrouded in secrets. She couldn't get out of her head the conversation she had with him the night before, when she saw his criminal friend, Marcus, making contact with Ethan. The betrayal cut deeper than any blade. "Why didn't you tell me, Ethan?" Jenna asked, her voice low but loaded with emotion. She was turned away from him, but she could feel the tension in the air. The soft music playing in the background seemed distant, as if the world around them had stopped to listen to her pain. Ethan hesitated, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I didn't want to worry you. Marcus is... He's just a friend, Jenna. He doesn't mean anything to me anymore." She turned, facing him with an expression of pain and doubt. "But you don't understand, do you? He's part of your past. And now, this could put everything at risk. We have something here, something real." "I'm trying to change, I promise," he insisted, approaching. "The art, this installation, it's everything I've always wanted, and it's all I want now. I don't want to go back to that life. But you're in contact with him, and I can't ignore that, Ethan. How can I trust you if you don't tell me the truth?" The anguish in her voice echoed off the walls of the warehouse. Ethan felt his heart tighten. He knew it was a tough battle. "I don't want you to feel this way. Please, give me a chance. I'm here for you. The art saved me, and so did you." "Maybe you have to choose between them then," Jenna replied, her voice firm but with a tremor of insecurity. "What's more important to you, art or crime?" He felt the weight of the question. It was a choice he feared making, but that now seemed inevitable. "It's not fair to put it that way. I'm not who I was. What I did in the past doesn't define who I am now." "But the past always comes back to haunt us, doesn't it?" Jenna murmured, looking away. The silence between them became palpable, the tension almost unbearable. Night fell, bringing a mantle of darkness that seemed to reflect Jenna's state of mind. The warehouse, which once was a space of creation and hope, now felt like a labyrinth of uncertainties. Ethan, in turn, felt that time was running out. He needed to do something to prove to Jenna that he was worthy of trust. The next day, he decided to confront Marcus. He didn't want anything more from that life, but he needed to end this once and for all. At the corner of the street, where they used to meet, Ethan found himself face to face with Marcus, who had a cynical smile on his face. "Hey, man, I missed you. What have you been up to? I heard you're working with a famous artist now," Marcus said, the mocking tone evident. "I don't want anything more from this, Marcus. I'm not interested in your proposal. I'm out," Ethan replied, keeping his voice firm. "What do you mean, out? You really think you can just walk away like that? You know it's not that simple." Marcus's expression became threatening, his eyes cold as steel. "I don't need you. I don't need this life. I'm building something new, and that's more important than you can imagine," Ethan retorted, the determination growing within him. "You'll regret this, Ethan. The life of crime always calls you back. Don't forget that." Marcus turned his back, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. The decision was made, but the doubt still lingered in his mind. Upon returning to the warehouse, he found Jenna sitting on the floor, surrounded by paints and brushes. Her expression was one of concern, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. He knelt beside her and took a deep breath. "I made a choice, Jenna. I can't hide from my past, but I'm not going to let it define me. I choose you. I choose art," Ethan declared, his voice laden with sincerity. Jenna looked at him, a mix of relief and love filling her heart. "Do you really want this? Are you willing to leave everything behind?" "Yes," he replied, gently touching her face. "I'm here for you and for us." And so, amidst paints and dreams, they found themselves at a new beginning, a future that was still uncertain, but pulsed with the promise of renewed love and life. The night was shrouded in heavy darkness, only punctuated by the flashing lights of sirens echoing in the distance. Ethan found himself in a desperate situation, surrounded by familiar faces that, ironically, were once friends. The atmosphere was tense, and he could feel that the operation he had agreed to participate in was not what it seemed. "This isn't right," he thought, his instincts screaming for him to flee. But now, caught between loyalty to the old world of crime and the promise of a new life alongside Jenna, he felt paralyzed. Meanwhile, across town, Jenna was in her apartment, anxiety consuming her. The installation was almost complete, and the opening was scheduled for the next day. However, the worry about Ethan prevented her from concentrating. Suddenly, a terrifying thought crossed her mind. What if he's in danger? The idea of losing the only person who understood and believed in her talent made her abruptly stand up. Determined, she grabbed her phone and called him, but the call went unanswered. Her heart raced. "I need to go after him," she thought, putting on a coat and rushing out. Jenna headed to the last place she knew Ethan would be, an abandoned warehouse that served as a meeting point for those still involved in the life of crime. Upon arrival, she felt a shiver run down her spine. The internal lights flickered, and the sense that something was very wrong enveloped her. With adrenaline taking over, she decided to go in. Inside, the voices were loud and tense. "Do you really think you can get away with this, Ethan? We're family, and you can't just leave us." The tone of one of Ethan's henchmen echoed in the empty space. Jenna didn't hesitate and stepped forward, her determination guiding her. She knew she had to do something. "Ethan," she shouted, her voice firm and clear. All eyes turned to her, and the murmurs grew louder. "What are you doing here?" Ethan looked at her in surprise, but soon his expression turned to worry. "Jenna, you shouldn't be here. It's dangerous." "I don't care. We need to get out of here now," Jenna insisted, ignoring the suspicious looks from the others. "I'm not going to let you get involved in something you don't want. You don't need this." Ethan hesitated, the internal struggle evident on his face. But the crime friend, who was in charge, stepped forward. "She doesn't know what she's talking about, Ethan. What you need is loyalty, not a dreamer artist." The mocking tone in his voice made Jenna even more determined. "I'm more than just an artist, and you know it," she replied, looking directly at Ethan. "I have a plan that can expose all the corruption you're surrounded by. We can use art as a weapon, and this can free you." Jenna's words resonated with Ethan. He saw in her the light he had always sought, the chance to break free. With a quick movement, he turned to the crime friend. "I don't want this anymore. I'm out." His voice was powerful, and the decision was clear. The tension rose, and a brief silence followed. Ethan's crime friend, furious, tried to advance, but Jenna, in an act of courage, pulled out an instant camera she always carried. "You want to see the truth? Then let's expose all of this." And with a click, she captured the moment. Art, truth, and courage united in a single fraction of a second. The image she captured was a metaphor for what they were facing: light against darkness. The confusion that followed allowed Ethan to pull Jenna out of that place, running together. Outside, freedom was within reach. They were not free from the consequences, but together, they were stronger. "You did this for me," said Ethan, breathless. "You saved me. It's not just about you, Ethan. It's about us. Together, we can create something incredible without fear of the past," Jenna replied, holding his hand firmly. They were ready to face the world, no longer as fugitives, but as creators of their own story. With the art installation on its way to being revealed, now carrying the weight of their experiences, Jenna and Ethan decided that art would not just be a form of expression, but a tool for transformation. Together, they would embark on a new life, where love and art intertwined, symbolizing the journey that united them. Now that you've learned about the surprising twist of a desperate situation into a success opportunity, take a moment to reflect on the challenges you're facing. Are you letting these obstacles define your destiny, or are you ready to turn them into growth opportunities? It's in adversity that we often find the strength to grow and achieve our greatest goals. Think about a situation in your life that may be blocking your progress and ask yourself, how can I turn this situation in my favor? Share your ideas and experiences in the comments. I want to hear how you're facing your own challenges. And click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you liked what you heard now, you'll undoubtedly love this other story as well. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.